episode 18, David Wheatley's podcast, and this is yours truly, David Wheatley. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak to you like this, and I hope you are continuing to get some value from it. Last episode, we were talking about how musicians and their instruments come together. And we talked some about compliments and criticisms and bouquets and bricks. And I gave some detailed instructions as to how audience members should behave towards everybody. Okay, more about children and learning their instruments. I think just about every aspect of child development that gets studied by people, every aspect is represented in the musical instruments that people play. And in the same way that a child might go to see a speech therapist or an art therapist, a child could also go and see a music therapist. And there are music therapy degrees available people can get. I would like to learn more about them. Maybe I'll hear from somebody who has one who could outline what the degrees include. But it is my hope that they can be used as a diagnostic tool to find out what's going on with the child. The child comes in for a lesson. Maybe they're 8 or 9 or 11 or something. Of course, there's something. And by the way the person plays, in terms of the volume, and the tempo and the level of preparation, an astute music therapist would be able to tell what the person's life is like at home, same way a child psychologist can do so. I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis given to the parenting technique that is the coaching of an emerging instrumentalist, actually of any age, most often at a young age, but not always. There are lots of people come to instruments later in life or pick up an instrument later in life after, quote, the kids leave home, unquote, or somebody passes away. A life event allows the person to return to their instrument. And which brings us to the justice system in the household. How often have we heard somebody say, I came from a dysfunctional family? I wonder how many people there are out there who came from functional families. I think they should write in. Let's have a count on those. As we contemplate the solution, it becomes bigger. As we contemplate the problem, it becomes bigger. So how many people out there came from functional families? And the justice system in the courts in the U.S. are designed to create fairness, meaning that as the two parties, usually two, sit there, bring in their case or respective cases before the judge or jury, great pains are taken to make sure that the evidence being submitted has been gathered fairly and impartially and accurately, and that it is presented in a factual, ideally unemotional way to the people who decide the facts, whether they're valid, and put them in a hierarchy, and then those that interpret the facts and the behaviors that resulted or are evidenced by the facts, compare those behaviors to what the law says and what society says is the best way for people to function, which takes us back to the social psychology segments on individuals, couples, groups, individuals versus groups, and group versus group. And so the child who is exhibiting a behavior of discontent with the justice system might come in playing extra fast or extra loud or not preparing at all, leaving the instrument in the case, not even getting it out, and that there's valuable information in this. In studying at North Texas, we took a class called Comprehensive Musicianship, which was the 1970s version of expanding our minds so that music could be more than quarter notes, half notes. Beethoven, Brahms, Mozart, Bach. And so we decided that music was organized sound, and I've mentioned that before. And my chaos theory friends say, well, what about disorganized sound? We also looked at some parameters of music, that music needs to have pitch, the difference between a low note and a high note, and that it also has duration, a note that goes that long compared to that long. And it also has timbre, Timbre, the difference in sound between my voice and another person's voice, actually playing the same pitch. Or a French horn or a flute playing the same note one after another, the timbres are radically different. And we talked in one of the earlier episodes about how the performing arts exist and thrive in time, and that there is some sort of, I'm going to say, master chronological clock that keeps track of the time of the universe. Light years down to decades, centuries down to decades, down to years, into months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, microseconds. There's a form of technology invented called the Musical Instrument Digital Interface, MIDI. And there was a MIDI clock that runs throughout the world, and that every musical instrument that is a MIDI instrument has this clock running. And the clock denotes when certain events take place, such as when a keyboard on a synthesizer begins to be pressed down, that is noted. When the key makes it all the way to the bottom of that trajectory, that's noted. And then when the musician starts to let go of the key, that is noted, that time. And then when the key makes it all the way back up to the top, that is noted. And then if there's a sustain pedal holding the sound, the time it went down, began sustaining, and the time it ended being sustaining is also noted. And when the sound finally, not because we're waiting for it, but finally ends, that time is noted. So time is very important to the performing arts. And time is also very important to the justice system. But you were wondering how I was going to link that. And it's also very important to the raising of children. Most of us, if not all of us, have seen a parent or child caregiver berating a young child for not knowing how to do something that they're not supposed to know yet. And as a result, tremendous cognitive dissonance is being put on the child. Child is 2, understands the world through a 2-year-old lens. And the caregiver says, can't you hurry up? You've been there for 10 minutes. What's wrong with you? The child has to deal with that compared with how they really are. And out of that dissonance comes trauma. And kids have to live with that. So when they say they lived in a dysfunctional family, that would be a big part of it right there. And so when they say age appropriate, I think a lot more study needs to be done on what is age appropriate. And I think all music teachers need to study child development. And some people develop more slowly than others. In fact, everybody develops more slowly, except for one person who develops at just the perfect speed, MIDI speed, light years, all of that. That person is perfect. All the rest of us are lagging. And we discussed emotional ages, that they tend to lag. Chronological ages are easier to measure, and intellectual age can change rapidly depending on the amount of study people are doing and how many of David Wheatley's podcasts they're listening to. So I'm making a request or plea for more child development training of teachers, especially music teachers, especially private teachers, and also study in psychology and family psychology. Ideally, everybody who teaches privately or otherwise would have a master's degree in psychology, a degree in music therapy, be excellent at their instrument, and be able to be an encourager and cheerleader to people that are coming up through the system. That is a lot to think about. And it's going to take a lot of work, but like anything else, there are 2 times to start things: when we're young and now. So on this one, let's start right now to get this going, get these degrees underway. Certifications, require them. And let's get this industry, trade, practice transformed into being what it can be to really help children throughout the world. And not just children, but I'll make it everyone throughout the world. You know what I'm going to say next. This concludes episode 18. Thank you for listening. David Wheatley 10 at gmail.com. Donate on Patreon. It's gone from please donate or consider donating to just donate on Patreon. Let's get that going. And I'll look forward to talking with you soon. Bye for now.